The universe was vast, infinitely so. It stretched in all directions, its stars a dazzling array of cosmic jewels, but the galaxy itself had always seemed beyond the grasp of any species. Until now. Humanity had only recently stepped into the larger universe, their starships small and fragile compared to the grandeur of the galaxy. When Earth's explorers ventured into the deep unknown, they were met with wonder and awe. But they also encountered dangers. The void was unforgiving, inhabited by creatures and forces beyond their comprehension. It was when they stumbled upon the Progenitor Archives, an ancient and mysterious structure hidden on the barren moon of a long-dead planet, that everything changed. The progenitor race, long since vanished, had left behind relics of unimaginable power, artifacts capable of manipulating gravity, space, and time itself. Among them was an ancient device dubbed the Starforger, a mechanism that allowed its user to bend the very fabric of space to their will. The first humans to interact with the Starforger were not seasoned soldiers or brilliant scientists but a small group of pioneers, each a talented individual in their own right. They were explorers, people who saw the stars not as a destination, but as a challenge. Their leader, Captain Sarah Hale, a former astronaut turned deep space adventurer, had always believed that humanity's future lay among the stars, but even she had no idea just how far they would be able to push the limits of what was possible. As Sarah and her crew activated the Starforger, they were enveloped by a surge of energy so powerful that it left them breathless. It was as if the universe itself had bent to their will. The device granted them control over space, allowing them to create wormholes at will and to manipulate stellar matter, harnessing the raw energy of a sun to power their ships. In that moment, they knew they had unlocked something far beyond their understanding. But they also realized something darker. With this kind of power, the balance of the galaxy could be tipped. Civilizations that had taken millennia to grow might fall at a whim, and the fragile peace between species could shatter. The news spread like wildfire. Within weeks, every faction in the galaxy was aware of the discovery, an ancient and unstoppable power now in the hands of a species that had only just begun to understand their place in the cosmos. But humanity was not the only one to find the Progenitor Archives. The Xerians, a technologically advanced race that had dominated the galaxy for centuries, were the first to make contact. Their empire stretched across vast star systems, and they had long believed they were the true heirs of the stars. The Xerians arrived in full force, their fleets massive and imposing, a testament to their unmatched technological might. Their leaders, the elders of the High Council, were not interested in diplomacy or negotiation. They demanded that the Starforger be handed over, claiming that it was rightfully theirs by birthright. For them, humanity's mere discovery of the device was an affront to their centuries of rule. But the humans were not intimidated. They had a weapon far greater than the Xerians could ever hope to wield: unity. The Starforger was not just a tool, it was a symbol, a sign that humanity could, at last, challenge the long-standing order of the galaxy. And though they were outnumbered and outgunned, they were determined to defend their discovery. Captain Hale stood at the helm of the starship Aegis, a sleek vessel designed with the power of the Starforger coursing through its core. Her crew had come together not just out of necessity but out of a shared belief in the possibilities of the future. They believed they were not just taming the stars, they were becoming something greater, something that would reshape the entire galaxy. As the Xerian fleet loomed on the horizon, a standoff was inevitable. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, as if waiting for the moment when the universe would shift once more. A single spark of defiance had been lit, and it was clear, humanity had no intention of being subjugated, not when the stars themselves were within their grasp. And so, the first battle for the galaxy began, not just for the Starforger, but for the very soul of the universe itself. The Xerians had the might of their fleets, but the humans had the power to bend space and time to their will. And with that, they had already changed the game. The stars, it seemed, were no longer their masters. They were now humanity's to command. The standoff between humanity and the Xerians seemed endless, like a storm held at bay by sheer will. The immense starships of the Xerian fleet hovered in space, their gleaming hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. They were a sight to behold, a manifestation of the power and pride of a civilization that had long considered itself the rightful rulers of the galaxy. But Captain Sarah Hale's ship, the Aegis, was unlike any vessel the Xerians had ever seen. Built with the power of the Starforger, it could bend the laws of physics themselves. The Aegis and its fleet of human ships, while smaller and fewer in number, were poised for an unprecedented conflict. Humanity had something the Xerians could never replicate, the power to control the fabric of space itself. The Xerians sent their emissaries to demand the Starforger, but their words were laced with arrogance. Their High Council's elders issued threats, warning of annihilation should the humans refuse to comply. The progenitor device, they claimed, was a relic that should never have fallen into the hands of a lesser species. But the humans were not just any species, they were the first to discover the power of the stars, and their hearts burned with an unyielding desire to claim their place in the galaxy. "You don't understand," Captain Hale said firmly, her voice cold as the infinite void outside her ship. "You had your time. But now it's ours." The tension in the galaxy reached its boiling point when the first shots were fired. The Xerians struck first, unleashing devastating energy blasts that cracked the hulls of human ships. Their technology was precise, lethal, designed to overwhelm any opposition. But humanity's response was swift. The Aegis used the power of the Starforger to warp the very space between them and their enemies, causing the Xerian shots to miss their targets, leaving only empty space where once there had been deadly projectiles. With the power of wormholes, the humans opened rifts in space, appearing behind Xerian ships at impossible speeds. They fired back with weapons that drew energy from the stars themselves, rendering Xerian shields useless. For the first time in millennia, the Xerians were on the defensive. In the chaos of battle, the humans began to realize just how much they had underestimated their newfound abilities. The Starforger granted them not just the power to manipulate space, but to create new realities within the fabric of the universe. They could conjure suns out of nothing, form asteroid fields to shield their ships, and even create distortions in gravity that sent Xerian vessels careening into deep space. However, the Xerians were not without resources. Their fleet, though momentarily faltering, was relentless, and they adapted quickly to the humans' new tactics. They sent specialized elite squads into the fray, Xerian operatives skilled in sabotage and assassination, using stealth technology to board human ships in an attempt to steal the secrets of the Starforger. Their leader, Admiral Volgar, was a seasoned strategist, whose mind was as sharp as his ship's weapons. He was not a typical Xerian. Volgar had a deep respect for humanity's resilience, recognizing them as the first species to truly challenge the established order of the galaxy. He knew that, should they survive this conflict, humanity would rise to become the galaxy's next dominant force. This was not something he could allow, not without a fight. But Admiral Volgar's respect did not stop him from hatching a plan to destroy humanity's newfound power. He began to deploy a weapon that had been buried in Xerian archives for centuries, the Quantum Reaver, a device capable of severing the Starforger's connection to the galaxy, rendering it inert. The device's activation would destabilize space itself, causing the wormholes created by the Starforger to collapse into singularities. The results would be catastrophic, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. The stars themselves could begin to flicker out of existence. If the Xerians succeeded, they would plunge the galaxy into chaos, but they would also reassert their dominance as the uncontested rulers of the void. Unbeknownst to the Xerians, however, Captain Hale and her crew had already discovered the existence of the Quantum Reaver. As the battle raged on, the humans raced against time, determined to prevent the device from being activated and using their own ingenuity to outmaneuver their enemies. Sarah Hale was beginning to realize that the battle was more than a fight for dominance, it was a struggle for the future of the galaxy itself. The Xerians were not only challenging humanity's right to control the stars, they were threatening to unravel the very fabric of space. Every second counted. As the stars glimmered in the distance, their light bathed in the blood-red glow of distant explosions, Captain Hale and her crew prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. The fate of the galaxy now rested in their hands. The war for the stars had only just begun. Captain Sarah Hale stood at the command deck of the Aegis, her mind racing. The Xyrians had deployed their weapon, the Quantum Reaver, and they were closing in on the device's location, deep in the heart of a collapsing star system. The tension was palpable, every moment bringing them closer to an event that could tear the galaxy apart. She could feel the weight of the galaxy's future pressing on her shoulders. Her eyes flicked over to the holographic display in front of her. The Xyrian fleet was pushing forward, determined to destroy the Starforger and any who stood in their way. Hale knew that a head-on confrontation was not an option, they would be obliterated before they had a chance to strike. "We can't let them reach the Quantum Reaver," Hale said, her voice steady despite the urgency that thrummed beneath it. "We need to disable it before it activates." Lieutenant Marco, a sharp-eyed strategist who had grown to be one of Hale's most trusted officers, nodded grimly. "The Reaver's hidden in the gravity well of that collapsing star. Any direct approach would be suicide. We need to create a distraction, something to draw them off course long enough for us to strike." Hale considered this for a moment. There was a plan, a dangerous one, but it was the only chance they had. With a quick motion, she turned to the ship's helmsman. "Prepare the Aegis for a gravity breach jump," she ordered. "We're going in through the heart of the black hole." The crew froze. The concept of jumping a starship into the heart of a collapsing star was madness. It was a move that had never been attempted, let alone survived. But Hale had no choice. The Xyrians had grown too numerous, their technology too potent. They couldn't afford to waste time with conventional tactics. "We're not just going to survive this, we're going to win," Hale said, determination etched on her face. With a heavy hum, the Aegis powered its engines to maximum output, preparing to enter a gravitational anomaly. The crew scrambled, adjusting the ship's systems to account for the near-impossible maneuver. Outside, the massive Xyrian vessels continued to circle like vultures, unaware of the human ship's imminent movement. "Everyone, brace for impact," Hale ordered. "We're jumping into the black hole." As the ship's thrusters ignited, the stars outside seemed to stretch, warping and bending as the Aegis entered the edge of the gravity well. The familiar blackness of space was replaced with a dazzling tunnel of distorted light as they entered the Singularity's gravitational pull. The ship lurched violently, as if the universe itself was trying to tear it apart. "Hold on!" Marco shouted over the cacophony of alarms and rattling walls. "We're about to breach the event horizon." The Aegis was plunged into total darkness, the crew's vision reduced to nothing but the sensory data flooding into their minds. Time itself seemed to stretch and warp as the ship was pulled deeper into the black hole. Every second felt like an eternity. But Sarah Hale's focus remained unwavering. They had to get to the Reaver. With a final, gut-wrenching pull, the ship was ejected from the black hole's core. The Aegis appeared in a vast, empty space, the remnants of the collapsing star now only a faint memory. Ahead, the Xyrian fleet had been scattered by the gravity breach, their ships disoriented and uncoordinated. But not for long. They would recover quickly. "Now, while we have the advantage," Hale shouted. Full speed ahead to the Reaver. As the Aegis rocketed toward the location of the Quantum Reaver, Hale's mind raced. They had no idea what kind of defenses would be in place. The Xyrians were ruthless. If they'd put the Reaver in a place like this, surrounded by a collapsing star and the wreckage of countless fleets, it would be well protected. "Prepare the boarding party," Hale ordered. "We're taking the fight to them." Her team, a hand-picked group of elite soldiers and engineers, was ready. Among them was Lieutenant Ryu, a seasoned combat specialist who had once faced the Xyrians on the front lines. Alongside him was Dr. Elena Voss, a brilliant scientist who had spent years studying the progenitor archives and had the knowledge to understand the complexities of the Starforger. "We can't afford mistakes," Dr. Voss said, adjusting the interfaces on her helmet. "The Reaver isn't just a weapon, it's a destabilizer. If we don't deactivate it correctly, we could trigger a chain reaction that rips apart the entire system." Hale nodded. "We're not here to make mistakes. Let's go." The Aegis dropped out of warp speed, its engines humming as the ship slowed to a near standstill. In front of them, a vast structure floated ominously, the quantum reaver now clearly visible. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a massive, pulsating device surrounded by Xerian guard ships. "We've got one shot at this," Marco said, eyes locked on the reaver. "If we can get close enough, we can disable it before they realize what we're doing." Hale drew a deep breath, feeling the gravity of their mission weigh down on her once more. "Then let's make sure we don't miss." With a sharp exhale, the crew of the Aegis prepared to make history, knowing that the fate of the galaxy now hinged on their success, or failure. The first true battle for the stars was about to unfold in the darkest corner of space. The Aegis lurked in the shadow of the Quantum Reaver, a massive structure surrounded by an array of Xerian defense ships. It was a silent behemoth, its pulsating core giving off an eerie, dim light in the cold expanse of space. The Xerians had clearly anticipated an assault on their weapon. Its outer shell was fortified with shields and armed to the teeth with advanced weaponry. A direct assault would be suicide. Sarah Hale stood at the center of the command deck, her gaze locked onto the display. A quiet determination burned in her eyes. They were in enemy territory now, and failure was not an option. If they didn't stop the Quantum Reaver, the galaxy would be plunged into chaos. The power to control the stars would be forever out of reach. "We can't approach head-on," Marco said, analyzing the tactical display. "The defenses are too strong. But there's a weak point, a small blind spot in their perimeter, near the tail end of the Reaver's structure. If we can slip past their detection grid, we might be able to board it." Hale's lips thinned into a determined line. "We don't have time for subtlety. We're going in. Prepare the boarding team." The team was ready. Lieutenant Ryu, Dr. Elena Voss, and the rest of the elite human squad stood at attention, armored and ready. They had trained for this moment, but the stakes had never been higher. The fate of the galaxy rested on their success, and they all knew it. "Let's move," Hale said, her voice unwavering. The Aegis shifted, its engines humming with power as it accelerated toward the weak point. The Xerian fleet didn't see them coming, not at first. Their ships were scattered, still reeling from the unexpected breach into the gravity well. The momentary disarray bought them precious seconds. It was all they had. The human ships, small but fast, darted between the wreckage of the Xerian fleet, weaving through the debris like predators in the night. Every second was a gamble, but Hale's crew were veterans of chaos. They knew how to survive the storm. "Docking in 2 minutes," Marco said. "All systems prepped for boarding." Hale nodded, stepping into the transport bay where the team was assembling. "We stick together. Get in, disable the Reaver, and get out. We don't have the luxury of mistakes." The transport shuttle rocketed away from the Aegis, cutting through the space between them and the Reaver's blind spot. The journey felt like an eternity, every heartbeat echoing in the team's ears. The Xerians hadn't noticed them yet, but that wouldn't last. They needed to move quickly. The shuttle shuddered as it passed through a final layer of radiation, and the Reaver loomed ahead, a massive tower of dark metal, its surface scarred and pocked with ancient damage. As the shuttle approached, the ship's exterior sensors flared. Xerian patrols were closing in on their position. "We're going to have company," Ryu warned, his hand hovering over the trigger of his pulse rifle. "Prepare for a fight." The shuttle docked with a hollow thud against the Quantum Reaver's surface, the magnetic locks engaging. The team moved swiftly, their boots hitting the cold, metal floor of the Reaver's outer shell. The sound of their movements was drowned by the deep hum of the Reaver's core, as though the device itself was alive, breathing, pulsing with the power to rewrite the universe. "Stay sharp," Dr. Voss muttered. "The core's energy readings are unstable. We don't know what kind of defense systems the Xerians have in place." The team moved quickly, slipping into the Reaver's inner chambers. They passed through long, dark corridors, illuminated only by the faint glow of their helmets. Every corner could hide a Xerian soldier, every door could open into a deadly trap. They had to move fast, knowing that once the Xerians realized their presence, reinforcements would flood in from every direction. "Take left flank," Ryu said, his voice a low growl as he signaled to the others. We'll breach at the main control room. As the team made its way deeper, the pulse of the quantum reaver grew louder. It was vibrating in their bones now, resonating through the very walls, a constant reminder of the unimaginable power it contained. They reached the control room, but the door was locked with a series of complex biometric and energy signatures. "This is it," Dr. Voss said, her hands moving over the interface with swift precision. "If we can override the security protocols, I can shut down the core from here." But even as she worked, the first signs of the Zirians' awareness of the intruders began to surface. The alarms blared to life, signaling that something had breached their security. The air crackled with tension. "They're coming," Marco said, his voice urgent. "We've got minutes, max." With a final tap, Dr. Voss's fingers flew across the console. The light on the terminal flickered, and then a low, mechanical hum emanated from the walls. The doors to the control room hissed open, revealing the central control hub, a vast array of shimmering data screens and glowing energy conduits. "Disruptor in place," Dr. Voss said, securing a small device into the central control matrix. "We're on the clock. Get ready." No sooner had she spoken than the doors slammed open with a deafening crash. A squad of Zirian soldiers, clad in advanced combat armor, poured into the room, weapons raised and energy shields flashing to life. "Get down!" Ryu barked, his pulse rifle firing in quick succession, taking down the lead soldier with deadly precision. The rest of the team opened fire, engaging in a fierce firefight, the air thick with the sound of blaster shots and energy fields clashing. Ryu's shots were flawless, each one hitting its mark, but the Zirians were relentless. They pushed forward with the ferocity of a species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. "Voss!" Hale shouted over the chaos. "We need that core offline now." The scientist's hands were shaking, but she didn't hesitate. With one final flourish, she triggered the disruptor. The room shook violently as the central energy conduits sparked and cracked, the hum of the reaver faltering. The Zirian's eyes widened as the system began to destabilize. The quantum reaver was dying. But the battle was far from over. The room trembled with the violent aftershocks of the quantum reaver's destabilization. The disruptor had done its job. Energy pulses crackled across the control hub as the vast, intricate systems began to unravel. The Zirians were panicked now, scrambling to restore order to the failing device. It was too late. The core was unstable. Soon, the Reaver would be a non-entity, but the Zirians weren't about to let the humans walk away unchallenged. "We've got minutes." Dr. Voss shouted over the chaos, her fingers flying across the malfunctioning console, trying to shut down the remaining power surges. "The Reaver's energy field is going to collapse. We need to get out of here now." Captain Hale didn't need to hear more. The Zirians were already regrouping outside the control room, and the sound of their armored footsteps echoed down the corridors. They knew they were running out of time, time for escape, time to save the galaxy. If they didn't leave now, they'd be caught in the implosion of the quantum reaver. "Ryu! Marco! Get the team to the shuttle, now!" Hale barked, her voice steady despite the rising threat. "Voss, disable the security locks on the door, and let's move." The team swiftly made their way to the shuttle bay, a narrow passage that led out to the transport dock. Their mission had been a success, but the battle was far from over. Behind them, the sounds of Zirian reinforcements grew louder. They had a full squad on their tail, and time was running out. With each passing second, the structure seemed to groan as the massive device fought to maintain its existence. "We're almost there," Marco shouted, voice tense. "Hurry!" Ryu led the charge, rifle raised as he swept the corridor ahead. The soldiers had a single objective now: to prevent the humans from escaping. The stakes couldn't be higher. As Hale and Dr. Voss ran behind him, Marco provided cover fire, picking off Zirian soldiers as they emerged from the shadows. It was a desperate fight, but every shot, every move, was made with one goal in mind: survival. They reached the shuttle bay, the sound of the Zirians' pursuit echoing through the metal halls. The shuttle was in sight, but so were the Zirians. A Zirian officer stepped into the corridor, blocking their escape route, flanked by two of his fiercest soldiers. He leveled his weapon at Hale, his eyes narrowed in fury. "You've interfered in matters far beyond your comprehension, human," the officer said, his voice cold and commanding. "Your kind is no match for us." Hale didn't hesitate. "Maybe not. But we've got something you don't. A future." She fired first. The blast sent the officer stumbling backward, his shields flaring, but Hale's aim was true. A second shot followed, knocking the officer's rifle from his hands. His soldiers hesitated, unsure of how to react. In that moment, Ryu and Marco were on them, taking down the remaining guards with a flurry of precise shots. "Move!" Hale shouted, as the shuttle door began to close. The remaining members of the team rushed aboard, with Marco covering their rear as the Zirian forces regrouped for one final charge. The door slammed shut just as a barrage of energy fire slammed into the hull. The shuttle shot into the vastness of space, narrowly avoiding a direct hit from the Zirians. But their danger wasn't over, this was only the beginning. Inside the shuttle, the team was breathing heavily, the weight of the escape pressing down on them. Hale leaned against the console, watching the stars blur as they made their jump toward the Aegis. "We've done it," Ryu said, breathing heavily, a grim satisfaction in his voice. "The Reavers disabled. It's over." But Hale shook her head. "It's not over yet. The Zirians will never give up. We've made a powerful enemy today, and they'll come for us with everything they have." Dr. Voss was quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the rapidly approaching Aegis. She finally spoke, her voice uncertain. "And what if they come after the Starforger next? They're going to see us as a threat now. Not just because of the Reaver, but because of what we've unlocked with that device. The power to reshape the galaxy. Do you think they'll stop there?" Hale looked at her, understanding the gravity of her words. The Starforger was more than a weapon, it was a key. It could grant humanity the ability to bend the laws of the universe itself, something the Zirians would never allow. To them, humanity was no longer just an upstart species. It was a competitor for power, something far more dangerous than the humans could have anticipated. "We won't let them take it," Hale said firmly. "We protect the Starforger with everything we've got. The galaxy is big, but humanity's future isn't just about surviving, we're here to make our mark. And we're not backing down." The shuttle docked with the Aegis, and the crew immediately began preparations for their next move. But as they secured the Starforger and checked their weapons, a sense of unease lingered in the air. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The Zirians would come again. And next time, they would be ready. Hale stood before her crew, looking out into the vast expanse of space. The stars stretched out before them, waiting to be explored, to be tamed, to be shaped by humanity's hands. "We may have only just begun," she said, her voice filled with determination. "But we're going to show the galaxy that humanity is no longer the underdog. It's time for us to take our place among the stars." The fight for the future was far from finished. But this time, humanity had the power to change the rules of the game. Captain Sarah Hale stood alone in the observation room of the Aegis, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. The stars stretched endlessly before her, beautiful and indifferent, a constant reminder of the scale of the battle that was just beginning. The hum of the ship's engines, the distant sounds of the crew preparing for their next move, felt insignificant against the weight of the responsibility that hung over her. Humanity had done the unthinkable, seized the Starforger and thwarted the Zirians' ambitions. But it was a fragile victory. The Zirians, once the undisputed rulers of the galaxy, would never allow this humiliation to stand. They would come for the Starforger, and when they did, humanity would need more than just courage to survive. They would need allies, resources, and a way to control the power they had unlocked. "We've got a problem, Captain," Marco's voice broke through the silence. He stepped into the observation room, his usual bravado gone, replaced with the weight of the situation. "The Zirians are already mobilizing. We've intercepted chatter from their command ships. They're organizing a massive offensive. Hale turned slowly, her eyes narrowing. I thought we'd have more time. How long until they reach us? Hard to say, Marco replied, glancing at the nearby tactical display. But we're already on their radar. We can't hide forever. The news hit hard. The victory at the Quantum Reaver had bought them a little time, but the Xerians were not the type to wait long. They had the resources, the will, and the ruthlessness to see this through. The Aegis was a powerful ship, but even it would not stand against the full might of the Xerian war machine without help. Hale's mind raced. We need to make contact with the human colonies, especially the ones on the fringe. They're our best shot at building a resistance. We need to rally support, and fast. Lieutenant Ryu, ever the pragmatic one, spoke up. And we need to figure out what to do with the Starforger. If the Xerians are really coming for it, they'll stop at nothing to get their hands on it. We can't risk that kind of power falling into their hands. Hale nodded. The Starforger wasn't just a weapon, it was a potential game-changer. Whoever controlled it could shape the galaxy in their image. The Xerians had wanted to use it to solidify their dominance over the galaxy. But humanity? Humanity could use it to level the playing field, to carve out a future for themselves among the stars. We'll have to keep it safe, and we need to find a way to unlock its full potential. Dr. Voss, what's our current status on understanding the Starforger's technology? Dr. Elena Voss stepped forward, her face illuminated by the glow of the console in front of her. The technology is unlike anything we've ever encountered, Captain. I've managed to access some basic functions, but its true potential remains beyond our grasp. It's as if it's not just a device, but a gateway. A tool capable of rewriting the very fabric of space itself. It could change everything. So it's not just a weapon, Hale mused, her eyes narrowing as she considered the implications. It's a key. A key, Dr. Voss confirmed. And if the Xerians unlock it first, they could use it to control not just space, but time itself. They could collapse entire star systems, reshape the physics of this galaxy, destroy us all. The stakes had just gotten higher. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for the future of the galaxy itself. We need to move quickly, Hale said, her voice hard with resolve. Prepare a transmission to the human colonies. Let them know we've got the Starforger, and that we need their support. And we need to fortify our position here. Set course for the nearest colony. The crew went into motion, gathering supplies, preparing for a journey that could determine the future of humanity. The Aegis was already primed for a jump, its engines charging as the crew worked tirelessly to secure the ship for what was sure to be a long, dangerous trip. Hours later, the Aegis jumped into FTL, its engines flaring to life as it tore through the fabric of space toward the nearest human colony. Along the way, the crew had begun to piece together their strategy. They would need more than just raw strength to defeat the Xerians. They needed knowledge, support, and an edge, something the Starforger could give them, if they could harness its power before the Xerians did. But even as they made their way through space, the Aegis was not alone. Unbeknownst to them, a Xerian fleet had already begun its pursuit. The Xerians knew the Aegis had the Starforger, and they would stop at nothing to reclaim it. It was only a matter of time before they would intercept the Aegis, and when they did, the true test of humanity's resolve would begin. The crew knew they were racing against the clock. They had to stay one step ahead of the Xerians. But more than that, they had to unlock the secrets of the Starforger. Only then would they have the power to fight back. Only then would humanity have a chance at victory. As the Aegis sailed deeper into the galaxy, a strange sense of anticipation settled over the crew. They were not just humans fleeing for survival. They were pioneers. They were the vanguard of a new era. And whatever awaited them on the horizon, they would face it together. The Aegis sailed through the stars, cutting through the vast emptiness of space as Captain Sarah Hale stared out the observation deck. The Xerians were closing in. The transmission to the human colonies had been sent, but there was no guarantee that help would come in time. The Starforger's secrets remain just out of reach, its true potential still locked behind a veil of impenetrable complexity. Every passing moment felt like a countdown, a race against a fate none of them were prepared for. "We're on approach," Marco said, interrupting Hale's thoughts. His voice was calm but tinged with the same anxiety that everyone else aboard the Aegis felt. "The colony's communications are coming through now. It's not much, but they've confirmed they're on high alert. They've received the warning." "That's good," Hale replied, her mind still racing. "But we can't count on their defenses alone. The Xyrians will be here soon, and when they arrive, they'll overwhelm anything we can muster. We need more than just their support, we need a plan." Dr. Elena Voss walked over to the tactical display, her face pale, yet focused. "I've been working around the clock to understand the Starforger's technology. There are patterns in the data, but they're erratic. It's almost as if it's adapting to us in real time. Whatever we do, the Starforger reacts. And that's a good thing, right?" Marco asked, raising an eyebrow. "We've got a literal cosmic superweapon, and it's adjusting to us. That's gotta be in our favor." Voss shook her head slowly, her fingers brushing the console with unease. "It's adjusting, yes. But that means it's also learning. The Xyrians could exploit the Starforger's patterns, learn to bypass them, or even use its very unpredictability against us. We need to control it before it controls us." Hale's jaw tightened. "Then we need to get ahead of the Xyrians and figure out how to harness it, fast. But we also need to strengthen our position. The human colonies are just as much in danger as we are. If we're going to stop the Xyrians, we'll need to unite our forces and defend this sector." Ryu, ever the strategist, added, "We can't do this alone. I've been looking over the list of colonies we've contacted. Some of them are small, isolated, but there's one that might be key, Arcadia. They've got a fleet, one of the last remnants of the old human naval forces. They might have the muscle we need to hold off the Xyrians long enough for us to unlock the Starforger's potential." "Arcadia," Hale repeated. "It's a gamble. But I agree. We don't have much time. Set course for Arcadia. We'll drop in, make contact, and see if we can get their fleet to back us up. I don't care how it looks, just get us their support." With a firm nod, Ryu began relaying orders to the crew. The Aegis adjusted its course, heading towards the Arcadia colony at maximum speed. But as the ship broke into high-velocity travel, Hale couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. She knew the Xyrians were already mobilizing, and the closer they got to Arcadia, the more dangerous their mission became. Hours later, as the Aegis dropped out of FTL space near the Arcadia system, the crew was tense. The vast expanse of space seemed to hold its breath as the ship approached the human colony. In the distance, the colony's defensive fleet came into view, small but formidable ships lined up in a formation that made Hale's heart race with cautious optimism. "Hale, you better see this," Marco said, his voice filled with disbelief. Hale stepped forward, her gaze locked on the approaching fleet. What she saw didn't inspire confidence, however, it was chaos. The fleet was disorganized, ships scattered across the system, some in desperate need of repairs. The distant glow of several burning structures on the colony itself painted a grim picture of the conflict the humans had already faced. The Xyrians had already been here, wreaking havoc on the colony's defenses, trying to stamp out humanity's resistance before it could truly rise. "Arcadia's under attack," Hale muttered, her stomach tightening. "Prepare to dock. We're going to need all hands on deck to turn this around." The moment the Aegis landed, the crew rushed into the thick of it. Arcadia was in chaos, its defenses shattered, its military forces stretched thin. Yet, among the chaos, there was still a spark of defiance. A group of soldiers, led by Admiral Jace Brannick, a seasoned war veteran, was holding the line. "We don't have much," Brannick said grimly as Hale approached. "But we'll give you what we can. Arcadia isn't ready to fall, not while we're still standing. But we need your help. We don't know how long we can keep the Xyrians off our backs." "Then let's make sure it's long enough," Hale said, her voice firm. We need to get the Starforger to full power, and we need to do it yesterday. The Xyrians are coming for us all. If we're going to survive, we need to unite our strength. You have a fleet. Let us help you hold the line while we find a way to use the Starforger's power. Admiral Brannick paused, looking her over as though weighing the words carefully. Finally, he spoke. You're right. We need help, and we need it now. We'll support you, Captain, but we need you to understand that we're fighting on two fronts. The Xyrians are relentless. We can't afford to fail. We won't fail, Hale assured him. The battle for Arcadia began almost immediately. The Xyrians had launched a full-scale invasion, their ships swarming toward the human colony with deadly precision. The Aegis and the ragtag fleet of Arcadia's defenders stood firm against the oncoming storm, but Hale knew the real fight was not in space, it was the fight for control over the Starforger's power. While the battle raged outside, Dr. Voss and her team worked relentlessly to decipher the Starforger's patterns, struggling to understand its mechanics. The ship's systems strained under the pressure as they tried to unlock the key to its unimaginable power. And then, in the heart of the chaos, the breakthrough came. We've done it! Dr. Voss shouted, her voice filled with a mixture of triumph and disbelief. The Starforger's energy is stable. We can use it, if we act fast. The power to reshape the galaxy lay in their hands. But in that moment, they knew the Xyrians were mere moments away from overwhelming them. The clock was ticking, and humanity's last hope rested on a razor's edge. As the first Xyrian ships breached Arcadia's defenses, Hale looked out at the stars, a fire burning in her eyes. This was it. The moment when everything would change. It was time to forge their fate. The space around Arcadia had turned into a battlefield, a maelstrom of twisted metal, burning wreckage, and the unmistakable hum of energy weapons tearing through the vastness of the void. The Xyrian fleet had arrived in full force, their ships descending like vultures, determined to crush the human resistance. But Captain Sarah Hale stood firm on the bridge of the Aegis, watching the firestorm unfold, her mind focused on one singular objective, the Starforger. Admiral Brannick, how's the fleet holding up? Hale's voice was calm but laced with urgency as she turned to face the holographic projection of the aging commander. His weathered face appeared on the tactical display, showing signs of fatigue, but his resolve was unshaken. We've lost a few ships, Captain, Brannick reported grimly. But the remaining vessels are doing everything we can to keep the Xyrians at bay. The Starforger is our only chance to turn the tide. You have to get it online, now. We're ready, Dr. Elena Voss's voice crackled over the comms, filled with a mix of excitement and fear. The Starforger's systems are stabilized. We've managed to tap into its core energy matrix. But there's one problem, if we use its full potential, the energy surge could cause a chain reaction across the entire system. If the Xyrians detect it, they'll come for us with everything they've got. But if we don't act now, we'll lose Arcadia. Hale's heart pounded in her chest. This was it, the moment that would define humanity's future. The Starforger could either become their salvation or their doom. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. Do it, she commanded. We've come too far to turn back now. As the Aegis moved into position above Arcadia's atmosphere, Dr. Voss initiated the Starforger's activation sequence. The ship's main engines roared to life as a brilliant blue glow emanated from the heart of the vessel. The Starforger was awakening. Energy began to surge through the ship's systems, cascading outward in waves of raw, untamed power. We're feeling the energy buildup, Voss warned, her voice tight. It's more than we anticipated. We have to control it before it spirals out of control. The Aegis shuddered under the strain, but Hale could feel the gravity of the moment. They had unlocked a power greater than any force in the galaxy, and with it, they would face the Xyrians head-on. Brace for impact, Hale ordered as the Xyrian fleet closed in, their ships unleashing deadly firepower in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the space around them lit up with explosions, energy blasts, and the flashes of colliding ships. But the Aegis was no longer just a ship, it was a weapon. The first pulse of Starforger energy erupted from the Aegis, a shockwave that rippled through space like a shock to the very fabric of reality. Xerian ships in the vicinity were torn apart by the force, their shields failing under the intensity of the surge. The Aegis soared through the battlefield, slicing through the chaos as its new power tore through the enemy's ranks. Hale watched, her gaze steely, as the Xerians struggled to react. The weapon had shattered their frontline. Humanity's raw will and ingenuity, amplified by the power of the Starforger, was now the galaxy's most dangerous force. But the Xerians were not easily defeated. "Captain!" Marco shouted. "They're adapting. The Xerians have already begun to recalibrate their ship's defenses. They've got some kind of countermeasure against the energy pulse. They'll adapt to this new power, and soon, it won't be enough." Hale's mind raced. The Xerians might have the technology, but humanity had something they couldn't account for: desperation. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future that belonged to them, not an alien empire. And that determination was their greatest weapon. "Dr. Voss, can we override the Starforger's patterns?" Hale asked, her voice steady, despite the chaos outside. "Can we shift the energy focus, make it unpredictable?" Voss's voice crackled with tension. "We can, but it's risky. If we do that, we might lose control of the system. It could backfire." Hale's eyes narrowed. "We have no choice. We need to throw them off balance." With a sharp nod, Voss worked quickly, her fingers flying over the console. The Aegis systems hummed with energy as the Starforger adapted once again. This time, the energy pulses became erratic, unpredictable, almost organic in nature. The Xerian ships couldn't keep up. A second surge from the Aegis hit the Xerian flagship head-on, piercing through its shields and causing it to break apart in an explosion of light. The Xerians faltered, their forces scrambling to regroup. It was the opening the human fleet needed. "Arcadia's fleet is rallying," Ryu reported, a note of excitement in his voice. "The Xerians are on the defensive now. We've got them on the run." Hale allowed herself a moment to breathe. The tides had turned. The Xerians, for the first time, had felt the raw power of humanity, and they were scrambling to recover. The Starforger was their key, and now, humanity was wielding it like a hammer against an empire that had once seemed invincible. But even in the face of defeat, the Xerians were relentless. "Admiral Brannick, prepare for their final push," Hale commanded, her voice firm. "They'll regroup. We need to be ready for whatever comes next." Brannick's image flickered back to life. "Understood. We'll hold the line as long as we can." As the Aegis continued its assault, the Xerian forces began to pull back. The tide of battle had turned, but Hale knew this fight wasn't over. The Xerians would come again, perhaps stronger than before. But humanity had learned something in these dark hours: they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the stars themselves. And they would never stop. Hours later, the battle was over. Arcadia was battered, its defenses in ruins, but the Xerians had been driven back. The Aegis stood triumphant among the wreckage of the Xerian fleet. The Starforger, still glowing faintly, pulsed with energy, a symbol of humanity's newfound power. Captain Hale stood at the command center, watching as the surviving human ships began to regroup. The galaxy had changed. "Report," she said, her voice steady, though the weight of the victory pressed heavily on her shoulders. "We've won, Captain," Marco said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "The Xerians are retreating. We've secured the sector." Hale allowed herself a small smile, though it was tempered by the realization of what lay ahead. This battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The Xerians would return. And when they did, humanity would be ready. As the Aegis moved into the heart of the system, Hale looked out at the stars once more. They had tamed the stars, but the true test was yet to come. The Starforger was theirs now, and with it, the future of the galaxy. And humanity would forge that future, no matter the cost.